Good evening once again, every pony. Um, well, I've just been making such headway with this story and gotten such positive feedback on it. I feel like I don't want to leave my listeners hanging for extended periods. So, thank you for said feedback. But anyway, hopefully I sound a little less tired than I maybe seemed last time looking back. I apologize for that. But, yeah, I'll just keep going now. Chapter the 10th. Homecoming. Vinyl emerged from the underground facility, somewhere in the middle of the ever-free forest. The sound of smoke in the distance clogged her nose, and she instantly thought of Ponyville. Fluttershy, she thought, galloping quickly in the direction of the smoke. Vinyl's mind wandered with images of Ponyville burned to the ground, fires raging everywhere, the corpses of every pony scattered about. Her eyes began to water as the image of a dead Fluttershy came into her mind. She shook her head and kept running through the forest as fast as she could. Within an hour she emerged from the forest and found herself staring at Ponyville. She sighed in relief, because Ponyville was safe. There were no fires, there were no bodies. She smiled and took off towards Fluttershy's cottage. The small house came into view, and Vinyl picked up speed. She still had no idea how long she'd been in that facility. Vinyl could have been there for a year for all she knew. Reaching the door, Vinyl didn't bother knocking. She stepped inside and opened her mouth to yell to Fluttershy, but couldn't say a word. The cottage was a wreck. There were books and various other items scattered about, the animals' homes were broken to bits, and her bookshelves were knocked to the floor. In a corner of the room sat Fluttershy. She was curled up and crying. Her mane was disheveled, her coat was messy, and her feathers were sticking out in every direction. "Fluttershy," Vinyl said softly, approaching the Pegasus. Fluttershy looked up, and her eyes suddenly lit up like Celestia's sun.
Vinyl!
Fluttershy shouted, standing quickly and running to the unicorn. She wrapped her arms tightly around Vinyl's chest and sobbed happily into Vinyl's shoulder. Vinyl was just relieved that Fluttershy was fine and that Ponyville was safe. She wrapped her arms around Fluttershy and nuzzled the Pegasus. After a cup of tea and a long talk, Vinyl found out that she'd been gone for a week. Fluttershy had pretty much lost it when Vinyl didn't come back that day. She had spent a few days lying in bed and crying. Vinyl felt touched that Fluttershy was so worried about her, and it made her feel like some pony actually cared about her again.
"I'm just so glad you're okay, Vinyl,"
Fluttershy said, staring at her cup. "Oh, you don't have to worry about me, Fluttershy. As long as I've got something, or some pony worthwhile waiting for me, I can make it through anything," Vinyl bragged, smiling and laughing.
"It's been so strange lately, with all the death and fighting. It's just so—"
A tear dropped into Fluttershy's cup of tea, and Vinyl reached out and put a hoof on her shoulder. "Don't worry, Fluttershy. I'm sure Celestia will take care of everything." Vinyl smiled and wiped a tear from Fluttershy's cheek. "It'll all be fine. We'll be safe here." Fluttershy looked up and smiled. Suddenly, the wall across the house exploded. Vinyl's ears rang and she was thrown against the wall. Fluttershy was tossed across the room from Vinyl, and she heard a loud snap as one of Fluttershy's wings broke. Vinyl tried to yell to Fluttershy to ask if she was okay, but her ears were ringing too loud. Debris was flung about the room, and Vinyl stood up shakily, rushing to Fluttershy's side. From the looks of it, Fluttershy was barely conscious. Vinyl checked for any major injuries, but found nothing other than her obviously broken wing. Looking out the gaping hole in the wall, Vinyl could see a massive army of buffalo marching toward Ponyville, each of them equipped with a fayed. Vinyl's eyes widened. The buffalo were going to attack Ponyville. She had to get Fluttershy out of the vicinity, and quickly. The buffalo were blocking their way into the forest, so the only way they could escape was if Vinyl took Fluttershy to Ponyville, and they found somewhere to hide until it was safe enough to escape. Vinyl lifted Fluttershy onto her back, and snuck out of the back door of the house. As they left, the buffalo set fire to Fluttershy's cottage, and the smell of smoke was thick in Vinyl's nose. When she arrived at Ponyville mere minutes later, she was relieved to see that the buffalo had yet to attack. Every pony knew it was coming, as there were makeshift barricades set up all over town, and every pony was armed with some kind of weapon. But then she heard a ferocious roar from overhead, and a huge red dragon swooped down, decimating the foremost barricade. Dragons, Vinyl thought. It was clear now. Ponyville was doomed. Fluttershy was unconscious now, and Vinyl wanted to get her broken wing wrapped up. Luckily, she spotted a fabric store nearby and quickly rushed inside. She ripped off a strip of white fabric and gently compressed Fluttershy's wing down. The Pegasus' eyes shot open as she howled in pain. "I'm sorry, Fluttershy. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Vinyl just kept repeating "I'm sorry" as she wrapped the broken wing. Fluttershy had her eyes shut and was weeping profusely. With tears in her own eyes, she ripped the fabric and tucked it into the rest of the wrap. "There," Vinyl said, wrapping her arms around Fluttershy. Fluttershy continued to cry and refused to speak. Vinyl didn't bother to attempt to console the pony, but instead led her outside. Ponyville had become a war zone. There were ponies holed up in almost every building, some shooting out of windows, some simply hiding. A dragon flew by, incinerating several stallions that were hiding behind a barricade. Fluttershy sobbed, and Vinyl looked up and down the street. It seemed safe enough, so she hoisted Fluttershy onto her back again, and took off to find more cover. Vinyl made it to quills and sofas without a cinch, and set Fluttershy down. "Fluttershy, I need you to listen," Vinyl began, tilting the Pegasus' head up and staring into her blue eyes. "Stay behind me at all times. If something happens to me, get to the Everfree Forest, and try to get to Canterlot ASAP. Do you understand?" Fluttershy whimpered. "Fluttershy, this is important. Do you understand?" Vinyl said loudly. Fluttershy's eyes watered, and she nodded. Vinyl smiled wearily and peeked around the corner of the building.
"But, Vinyl, nothing's going to happen to you, right?"
Fluttershy said quietly. Vinyl turned back to the Pegasus and stared at her without saying a word.
"Right?"
Fluttershy repeated. Vinyl didn't want to lie to Fluttershy, but she didn't want to make her think she was out to commit suicide. "I can't promise anything, but I'd rather take a bullet than have you hit," she said, peeking back around the corner. As a squad of buffalo passed, Vinyl saw a clear path to the forest. "Come on," she said, gesturing for Fluttershy to follow. Fluttershy reluctantly moved out from behind the building and followed Vinyl into the forest. When the pair had made it deep enough into the forest to drown out the sounds of gunfire, Vinyl signaled for Fluttershy to stop. "All right, Fluttershy, we should be relatively safe here. We can probably start moving to
Vinyl!
Fluttershy cut Vinyl off with an ear-splitting scream.
What?
Something hit Vinyl in the back of the head and sent her to the floor. Fluttershy was screaming, and then Vinyl heard a dull thump. She could see Fluttershy fall to the floor, and then Vinyl was hit in the back of the head again and blacked out. Vinyl came to in an all-too-familiar cellar. The scent of gunpowder and burning metal was in the air. Her head was pounding, and she looked around the room. To her left, she could see Fluttershy was tied to a chair, much like Vinyl was, and was still unconscious.
"Fluttershy,"
Vinyl whispered.
"Fluttershy,"
she said louder. A door behind Vinyl opened, and she could hear two sets of hooves walk into the room.
"Oh, well. It looks as if one of our guests has woken up,"
came the familiar voice of the one and only Don Livestrong.
"Hello, Vinyl,"
he said. standing in front of the unicorn.
Is this how you treat all of your loyal employees?
Vinyl spat angrily.
Loyal? Last time I checked, I did not tell you to go to Hoofington and kill my associates. I also told you to get rid of that Twilight Sparkle. Oh, and I'm not too happy about the death of my good friend Mr. Baines, Vinyl. Not happy at all.
Vinyl looked up at the dawn and spit at his face. He grimaced and punched Vinyl in the nose.
Be happy I haven't killed you yet, you unappreciative bitch, he said.
A soft groan from Vinyl's left told her Fluttershy was waking up.
Oh, looky here, your little filly friend is awake. Care to introduce me?
Livestrong walked to Fluttershy and placed his hoof under her chin.
What's your name, sweetie?
Livestrong said, smiling. Fluttershy squealed in fear and shut her eyes. Livestrong chuckled and turned to Vinyl.
You should tell your friends to be a bit more polite, Vinyl.
Livestrong ripped off the fabric wrapping Fluttershy's broken wing.
Oh, it looks like some pony is a little hurt.
Livestrong walked behind his desk and withdrew a blue Fayed. He looked at Vinyl.
Thanks for the help testing this thing on your friend. Scholar, was it?
He grinned and slipped the Fayed on.
Now, dear, let Dr. Livestrong check this wing out for you.
He grabbed Fluttershy's wing with his Fayed.
Oh, it's surely broken. Maybe I can fix it.
The claws of the Fayed tightened on the wing, and Livestrong bent it 90 degrees. Fluttershy let out a blood-curdling screech.
Leave her alone, you bastard!
Vinyl screamed. A large ice-blue stallion, even bigger than Livestrong, came out from the shadows and stood in front of Vinyl.
You might want to stay out of this,
he said with a thick northern accent.
Fuck you,
Vinyl said. The stallion lifted his leg and kicked Vinyl in the chin, sending her chair spiraling to the floor.
Now, Lady Scratch. No need to be impolite.
He laughed and pulled Vinyl's chair into an upright position.
Ah, yes, I don't believe you've met my associate, Mr. Iceberg. Have you, Vinyl?
Livestrong said, releasing his grip on Fluttershy's wing.
You see, Vinyl, I have important business to attend to. Iceberg here is going to entertain you both while I'm away.
Livestrong put his hoof on Iceberg's shoulder and they both laughed. Livestrong took off the Fayed, and Iceberg slipped it on.
Take good care of these ladies, Iceberg. Oh, you know it.
Iceberg replied as Livestrong left.
So, ladies, how about the game?
Iceberg turned around and picked up a revolver off of the table.
This is a game we play in the North to settle, how you say, disagreements.
Iceberg grinned maliciously and emptied the gun. He slipped a bullet into one of the chambers and spun it. It clicked to a stop.
We call it roulette.
He pointed the gun at Fluttershy and pulled the trigger. Vinyl shut her eyes and her heart began to pump quickly. Click. Vinyl let out a sigh of relief. He turned to Vinyl.
Now your turn, my dear.
He pointed the barrel at Vinyl's head and pulled the trigger. Click.
Oh, too bad, Miss Scratch.
He shook his head and turned back to Fluttershy.
No, just kill me, Iceberg,
Vinyl said.
She's no harm to any pony. Just kill me.
Iceberg raised an eyebrow at Vinyl.
Oh, but Miss Scratch, that would be against the rules.
He pulled the trigger. Click. Iceberg scoffed and swung his arm and pointed at Vinyl. Click. Sweat began to run down Vinyl's face, and her heart was racing. He pointed back at Fluttershy. Fluttershy sobbed and lowered her head. Vinyl's eyes watered.
Iceberg, be sensible. You know that if you kill her, I'll just escape and kill you,
Vinyl said.
Not necessarily in that order, either.
I'm sorry, Miss Scratch, but these are the rules and I shan't break them.
Iceberg began to pull the trigger.
"Oh, come on. Are all Northerners as dumb as you?"
Vinyl said with a chuckle. Iceberg turned his attention from Fluttershy.
"What was that?"
he said with a cocked eyebrow.
"I said, are all Northerners as dumb as you?"
Vinyl repeated with a smirk. Iceberg stomped angrily to Vinyl.
"You wouldn't last a day in the rock farms of the North, you ignorant whore!"
He swung the revolver back and smacked Vinyl across the face.
"Now shut your damn mouth and play the fucking game correctly, Miss Scratch."
He pointed the gun at Fluttershy once again. Vinyl's heart was about to explode, and she was practically drowning in her own sweat. She shut her eyes tight as tears streamed down her face. Click. Well, as usual, hope everyone enjoyed. I gotta say, this story has long since gone in a very different direction from the initial setup. All those early events, all the early events just seem like something to explain why a character like Vinyl would willingly get involved in like an all-out war. But anyway, only 2 more chapters left, and I'll most likely have those up very soon. Thanks again for listening, and good night.